Morgan, and today me and Ryan are going to give a presentation on the psychology of influence in business. First things first, a little bit of information about the authors. We have our first abstract, which is the psychology of persuasion influence, which is by Robert B. Cialdini. A little bit of information on him. He is a Regents Professor of Psychology and Marketing at the University of Arizona, as well as the abstract, which the book is on, Influence, is listed in the New York Times bestseller list. He's also the prize winner for the Society for Personality and Social Psychology. The other abstract that we chose is by Kurt W. Mortentz. He has a bachelor's degree in communication and advertising, also an MBA in marketing and consumer behavior. And some of his biggest accomplishments is he has received an acclamation from the Library Journal of Business Book of the Year for his book that the abstract is based on, which is Maximum Influence. The article that we chose was written by Dr. Felix Septiano, who is a lecturer in marketing at the University of Auckland in Australia. He also focuses on researching the influence and feelings of behaviors in consumer behavior. Lauren Prateri is a doctor based out of Indonesia. She's also a lecturer and researcher at a university, I'm trying to believe, Katagway something Catholic University. She was the assistant, sorry, I'm missing the information there on this. She was the assistant researcher for this article, and as far as we can tell, this is the first article in English that she's published. So this is some repeat information from some of our previous presentations. So the first 6 terms that we're going to give you guys is Cialdini's list of persuasive appeals, which is reciprocation, consistency, social proof, liking, authority, and scarcity. First is reciprocation. Reciprocation, it's the idea that if somebody has done something for you previously or you've done something for them, you are more likely to be persuaded into doing something for them if they've already done something for you. Authority, this is the theory that a doctor or a person in uniform or an expert in any field, that their opinion and what they say can influence you into choosing or buying products and ideas. Police wield more influence, form their power as officers of the law. Next is liking or connectivity. Liking is a term that Cialdini uses, whereas connectivity is the term that Mortensen uses. They're similar theories, in fact they're almost exactly the same, but it's the idea that the more you like someone, whether it's the more attracted you are to them or the more time you've spent with them and you have a high opinion of them already, the more likely you are to be persuaded into following their viewpoint or buying their product or idea. Consistency. This one is the theory that if you've already done something for somebody, it's foot in the door phenomenon basically. If you've already done something for someone and they ask a bigger favor, you're more likely to follow the bigger favor than if they just asked outright. Social proof or social validation. These are the terms used again in Cialdini and Mortensen's articles. This is following the herd. This is the idea of social pressure leading to somebody being it's the idea that someone can be influenced by the herd mentality. Anytime you see something that's best-selling or most popular, these are terms that are used by marketers when they're doing social proof or social validation. Scarcity. This is the portrayal of an idea or product as being scarce or creating a sense of urgency. So if you want the brand new iPhone and it's limited edition, signed by a celebrity, all these things create rarity, which brings up value or perceived value of the product. Now we have a little video.
fine. Just you can skip
Get
it.
started. This is Mariah does. Oh, fine.
That's fine. Yeah, you can skip it.
Thank you. Next we have verbal packaging. This is using vivid imagery to portray an idea or product in the best light. The more descriptive language that you use to make it look better, the more influenced someone can be. If you're already describing it as the best thing that's out there, when you actually get to show it to them, or if they see it with their best eyes, or see it for the first time, they'll see it in the best light. Dissonance. This has a few bits to it. First is bait and switch. You can see this in car dealerships. If they'll offer you a car deal and then they'll let you take it home for a few days on a test drive, but by the time you come back and you say you want the car, the terms have changed. If you've already mentally committed to buying the car, you're more likely to still go through with it even after the terms have changed. Next is brand loyalty. This is if you've had a positive experience with a brand or a certain product, you're likely to keep going and buying and using the product, especially if you're rewarded as a customer. Next is public commitment. This is used in weight loss programs most often, and arguably in social obligations such as marriage. And it's the idea that the more that you commit publicly or the more people that you tell, the harder it is, or least likely you are to back out of it. In weight loss programs, they'll say tell your family, make posts about it, tell your friends, get a gym partner who will keep you to your regimen. All these things are an example of public commitment and dissonance. Next is expectations. Your expectations of yourself can inhibit and enhance your performance. Expectations of others and their expectations of you can also change the perception of yourself and change the way that they perceive you. There's also an example, if you've ever heard of the placebo effect. It's the expectation that when you take medicine or drink more water or whatever, the effect will happen because you believe it will happen. Contrast. This is when you're contrasting two items, two ideas, two products in comparison to each other to create a gap or a perceived increase in value for one of them. If you ever see, Tide versus Gain commercials, they're comparing their leading competitor and how much better they are than them, completely erasing the other 10 or 20 different kinds of detergent that there are on the shelves in the grocery store. Esteem. This is when someone walks in the room and to make them feel comfortable, make them feel confident, you'll compliment them. This makes them a little more welcoming to your viewpoint, and or it's easier to influence them into buying or selling something. A tip on this is to make sure to compliment the actions instead of the individual, so it's less personalized. Involvement. The story is important with this one. If you give any kind of anecdotal evidence or share a personal story with someone to convince them of your viewpoint or to sell them a product, you're getting your audience involved. The more involved your audience is, the closer they are to your viewpoint, the more attention that they pay to it, and it also helps them to remember why they may want to buy a product in the future. Balance. This is the idea of balancing logical and emotional arguments to convince someone or influence them. So statistics, case studies to justify feelings of sadness, jealousy, anger, empathy. If you see the Sarah McLachlan puppy commercial and they're trying to get you to donate to the SPCA or whatever it is, this is pulling on your heartstrings with an emotional appeal. I believe this is the last one. This is association. This is anytime you see a celebrity endorsement of a product. It's also using expert statistics, examples, and case study. It's also using different associations. McDonald's is really good at this. So the golden arches of the M you associate with McDonald's and burgers and fries. And I'm loving it. The jingle also makes you think of McDonald's. Anytime you hear that, anytime you see the red on yellow, you're thinking of McDonald's. It's a common association. And I'll see if I can get this to play. But I guess not.
Okay.
This is the point in the presentation where we did our scenarios. Unfortunately, I didn't bring the slips with me today, but the gist of it is that we split the class into 2 halves. We gave them each 2 slips, and we made them stand up and talk with each other using the example of those slips to use the different persuasive techniques that we talked about in our presentation to gain slips as well as lose slips. Someone didn't do a very good job. You did not have to give them a slip. It was a bit of a competition, so you could get the most. We did give out candy. Thank you to Mariah for baking. And there was a bit of a catch. You can make 1 minimum ask before returning to your seat. It went really well. It took about 5 or 6 minutes, and yeah, we did end up having time for the next scenario, but first I had a couple more slides. So back to association and balance, especially balance, emotional appeal and cognitive appeal. First, the emotional appeal. What is that? That is anytime that you see, instead of statistic or case-based evidence, it's when someone uses, your emotions or your empathetic brain to appeal and convince you or persuade you of an idea or to buy a product. Cognitive appeal is the utilitarian appeal of a product. So the functionality, the efficiency, the comparison of maybe to other products, statistics are a great example of cognitive appeal for persuading somebody. And then we went through scenario 2. This one I do not believe ran as smoothly, but some of the feedback we got from other students was that this was the preferred one. Basically, we split them up into groups and asked them, gave them a scenario and asked them to talk within their group of what they would do, what persuasive techniques they would use, keeping in mind the relative relationship you could have with another employee, their standing in the office as well as your own, as well as the wording and method you may use to persuade them. And then we went around the room and talked about it. A lot of people used, what's the word I'm looking for? Likability. They were relying on, oh, this is one of my friends, this is why I got to a group with them. And in the same place, in a workplace, I would ask them to help me if I was in need of assistance on a workplace project. But there was a few people, interestingly, that did talk about, say, how to sell a car, how they would convince someone of that, and someone else, something about a grocery store, someone helping them to reach something. But yeah, that is the end of our presentation. Sorry that the videos didn't work.